In terms of players, and we've obviously discussed young players playing a major role at Anderlecht this season, mainly because of the financial concerns, not being able to buy players, having to bring them through the prestigious academy that they have. One of the younger players who's played a starring role, I think, over the past 2 seasons, despite some difficult times, is Albert Sambi Lokonga, who is a deep line number 8, very good dribbler, very good at beating players, getting through pressure, makes lots of progressive runs from midfield. Um, and one of the things that I found quite interesting, sort of just watching Lokonga, is that for a deep line midfielder, he's not quite a defensive midfielder. He doesn't get through a great deal of defensive work that you may associate with players who are good at escaping pressure, who can be just as good disruptively as well. I quite like how he's good at picking passes in the final third. His pass selection is quite good for a player so young. And progressing play in sort of those dangerous spaces, because we see often young players are very good up until that final moment where their pass maybe is a bit misguided, or isn't as accurate as it could be, or they just start again, turn around, pass back to where they came from. But Lokonga appears to have sort of got that refined down to a bit of a science, because he's very good at playing those incisive balls, and from his position, it's always more difficult when you have less of the pitch in front of you. So from that number 8, I've been very much impressed with Lokonga. I mean, what have your views of him been when you've seen Anderlecht play?
Yeah, no, I'm a massive Lokonga fan. Anderlecht games haven't always been the most exciting to watch, but he's exciting to watch. Like you said, I think the biggest thing you notice is the way he can just pick up the ball and take it a couple 10, 15, 20 yards down the field, beat a couple of players. He gets fouled so often. I think there was a game earlier in the season I watched where he played against Beerschot, and he was just running rings around them. His progression from and transition play was just causing them all sorts of problems, because he'd just take players out of the game for fun. Yeah, I know what you mean about the defensive work. You don't really notice him in that role. Even though he's deep and then picking it up and taking it and going. And I think playing a lot aside Josh Cullen's kind of had to do more of the defensive work to allow Lokonga to play. I think the problem Lokonga's found is that with Tau gone, all the kind of creative pressure's been put on his shoulders. And so teams are kind of looking to stop him as often as possible, because if you stop him, you kind of stop Anderlecht playing. One team that didn't do that early in this season was Genk. There was a game where they just didn't put any pressure on him, and he just looks in so much so much control. Like you said, his passing was fantastic. I think they only won 1-0, but the amount of chances he created for the side was just ridiculous. He should have better numbers in terms of assists than that this season, but he's kind of just been let down by the players around him. He is, in my mind, their biggest asset at the moment, without a shadow of a doubt. He's been given the captaincy as well. He's a leader on the pitch. He just, everything he does just oozes with class, and he's just a quality technician as well. I'd be very, very, very shocked if he is still there next season. I think, like we talked about, knowing when the right time to sell is, I think his kind of price tag's only going up at the moment, and I'd be shocked if there aren't clubs already having conversations with Anderlecht about him.
Yes, certainly. I mean, completely echo everything you've said there. I mean, I haven't sat down and watched an Anderlecht game, per se, those 90 minutes, but sort of going back on Instat, watching Lokonga's games, and it really is just a repetition of, taking the ball, carrying the ball 10, 15, 20 yards up the pitch. And it is just that escaping the pressure. It sticks out so much, especially in tight games where, it's very nip and tuck. There's not very much being given away, and then as soon as they funnel the ball through him, it's very much the impetus is there. It's almost like this spark has been generated. So I'm very keen to see sort of where he ends up, because ultimately his future is not in Belgium. It will be in one of Europe's top 5 leagues. Which I suppose sort of takes me on to the next question. The next point I was really going to make was, where do you perhaps see Lokonga fitting in? Because obviously, we've seen the likes of Tanguy Ndombele go from Lyon to Tottenham Hotspur, and Ndombele, while probably having a bit more to his game destructively, was very good at that ball progressing role in Liga. I think we've seen a lot of players with that similar sort of mold in Liga, and I'd say that in terms of the step up in quality, perhaps going to a Europa League challenging Liga side, might be a good step for him. We only need to look at Eduardo Camavinga at Rennes and see that when he opens his legs, I mean he may be three years younger, I believe, than Lokonga, but when he really opens his legs and gets moving, he does make some real inroads in through Liga midfields and defenses. So I can see something very similar happening with Lokonga if Liga was a place that he went to. But I was just interested to see if you thought he could maybe take a similar path to someone like Aurel Mangala at Stuttgart and go to the Bundesliga and perhaps do well there, or whether you also think that Liga might be a good avenue.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with everything you're saying. Kind of like when you talk about Camavinga, like Camavinga is one of those players, like you said about Lokonga, like you watch him, he's just exciting. And you get, like, when he gets on the ball, you're like, okay, something's going to happen here. And that's what I feel about with Lokonga. And I think because he's actually, like, physically, he's quite mature and he's got the physical ability to, like, beat players and get fouls and stuff. And Belgium is a physical league. I feel like he can kind of go Bundesliga, he can go league, and he could eventually be in the Premier League as well. Like, I think he has that in him. He's got the ability he needs. It just kind of depends on just getting to the right club. I think that's the big thing, like getting to a club that's going to give him the chances and play him. I think he could be in the Bundesliga. I'd like to see him in the Bundesliga. We've got another player from Belgium going to Wolfsburg and Asta Blanks, another like exciting youngster. And I feel like someone like Wolfsburg could play quite well at someone like that. Yeah, like a Stuttgart, someone like that sort of team. He'd be really, really like interesting to see him in. And all I really hope is that he goes somewhere he's going to get game time and he'll be allowed to develop, because I feel like he's been able to do that at Anderlecht, and the more game time he gets, just the better he's going to get.
Yeah, somewhere that he's going to be allowed to develop and continue to mature. But he's going to be appreciated and respected essentially for the player that he is. I think that's always going to be very important, especially with players when they make that first move. It can often be the move that is most important in their career, because it if you do it very well at the lesser league, for want of a better term, and then you may maybe make a misguided move to a club which perhaps doesn't suit you as well, then there's always going to be the question mark over, well, he couldn't do it in this league, whereas it may have been a completely different story if that player goes to a club where they are very much suited to the style of play. So I agree with you there in the sense that he does need to go somewhere where he's going to get game time in a system that suits him. And in terms of his development, Anderlecht have not been doing well these past 2 years, but you contrast that with Lokonga's own personal development, and you see that there is massive potential there, because a player who has really burst onto the scene and played a real protagonist's role over the past 2 years, past 18 months in a not a poor team, but a team that have been flagging. That's always a good sign that despite what's going on around him, he is developing. So yeah, I've got very, very high hopes for Lokonga.